It began with a whisper of movement in the dead of night, a soft, almost imperceptible vibration on my phone that shattered my quiet assumptions. In the first 100 words of that surreal moment, I learned that her new fitness tracker, which I'd assumed was nothing more than a tool for counting steps and heartbeats, had been silently logging late-night workouts at a location I never expected, a nearby apartment. My pulse pounded as I scrolled through the data, each minute of activity etched in glowing numbers and unfamiliar GPS coordinates. The betrayal hit me like a tidal wave, and in that moment, I realized that everything I thought I knew about her was about to change forever. I'd always admired her commitment to fitness. For years, she'd worn her tracker like a badge of honor, proudly sharing her daily step counts and celebrating her weekly workout goals. It was one of the many things that had drawn me to her: her discipline, her dedication to self-improvement, her ability to push through challenges. When she upgraded to a new model, she seemed even more excited about it. I watched, amused and impressed, as she set up her account, inputting her goals and smiling at the prospect of tracking her progress. But I never imagined that behind the metrics and statistics lay a secret so profound it would shatter the trust we'd built over the years. It happened on a quiet Tuesday night when I was restless and rummaging through our shared devices to kill time. I opened her fitness app out of habit, expecting to see her usual run totals and calorie counts. Instead, my eyes caught an anomaly, a series of late-night workouts that spanned nearly every night of the past week. The data was detailed, a record of every step, every heart rate spike, every minute of activity, but what startled me was the location. According to the tracker, her workouts weren't at the gym or on the familiar neighborhood running trails. They were logged from an address just a few blocks from our apartment, a place I had never heard her mention. I sat there, heart pounding, scrolling through the timestamps. At first, I rationalized it. Maybe she had tried a new route, or perhaps there was a temporary gym closure and she'd found an alternative spot. But the consistency of the data, the precision of the timestamps, and the location history told a different story. Night after night, she had been spending hours in that unknown apartment complex, under the guise of working out. Every entry was meticulously recorded, the distance, the duration, even the time of day, all aligning with the hours she claimed to be busy at work. Confusion and disbelief warred inside me. I remembered her recent change in schedule, her claim that late nights at the office had become the norm, but nothing had prepared me for this revelation. I recalled the times when I'd noticed her phone vibrating insistently in the other room, when she'd quickly silence notifications as if protecting a private conversation. I had brushed it off as work-related stress. But now, those fleeting moments seemed like deliberate attempts to hide something important. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. The numbers were irrefutable. The data showed that for nearly a week, her workouts began at 11:30 p.m. and lasted until almost 1 a.m. The location was consistent, a modest apartment building on Maple Street, a place I'd never seen her mention or visit with me. My heart sank as I wondered, what was happening there? Who was she meeting? And why had she felt the need to keep this hidden from me? Unable to sleep, I spent the rest of the night in a haze of conflicting emotions. I tried to recall every conversation, every subtle hint of evasiveness. There were moments I'd noticed, a furtive glance at her phone, a sigh when I asked about her day, and that lingering distance when she mentioned staying late at work. But I had dismissed them as the byproducts of a demanding career. Now, faced with concrete evidence, I was forced to confront a truth that was both devastating and inescapable. In the early light of dawn, as I sat alone in our kitchen, I knew I couldn't keep this secret to myself. I reread the data on her tracker, committed every detail to memory, and felt a deep, aching need for answers. With trembling fingers, I composed a text message that I never sent, outlining my confusion and hurt, and then stared at the screen, wondering if I was ready to face the truth. My mind raced with scenarios. Was this a misguided attempt to find solace? An affair cloaked in the pretext of fitness? Or had I simply misinterpreted a harmless habit? The possibility that she might be living a double life was unbearable, yet the evidence was undeniable. I tried to recall the day she'd excitedly showed me her new fitness tracker, the way she talked about it like it was a step toward a better version of herself. I had thought her passion for health and wellness was one of the things that bound us together, something pure and admirable. Now, it seemed to be a facade, a convenient cover for something more sinister. I couldn't shake the image of her smiling as she set her daily goal, not knowing that behind that smile lay secrets that would soon tear our world apart. With every passing minute, my heart grew heavier, and I knew I had to confront her. I couldn't let the silence continue, couldn't let the mystery of those late-night workouts fester like a wound. The decision to talk to her was both inevitable and terrifying. I imagined her face. Would she be defensive, remorseful, or indifferent? Would she try to justify her actions, or would she finally acknowledge the pain I felt? I knew that the conversation might be the beginning of an end, or perhaps a chance for truth and reconciliation. But as I looked at the cold, unyielding data on the screen, I understood that there was no turning back from this moment. In that fraught, heavy morning, I resolved to wait for her return. I gathered my thoughts, trying to steady my trembling hands and heart. I prepared myself for the confrontation, each second feeling like the calm before a storm that would sweep away everything I had once believed in. The necklace of numbers and coordinates was a silent testimony, a digital confession of a secret that I was not meant to uncover. Yet, here I was, forced to reckon with the possibility that my partner, the person I loved, had been leading a life I never knew existed. As I sipped my cold coffee, staring blankly out the window, I felt an overwhelming urge to understand every nuance of that hidden life. My mind buzzed with questions. What had drawn her to that apartment? Who was she meeting there, and what did they share that she couldn't share with me? I felt betrayed not just by her actions, but by the absence of trust, the foundation upon which our relationship had been built. It was a betrayal that cut deeper than any physical wound, leaving an ache that resonated in every fiber of my being. I knew that when she returned home later that evening, our conversation would be long and painful. The air in our home, once filled with warmth and shared secrets, would be replaced by a chill of uncertainty and despair. I resolved to confront her with the evidence, to ask her to explain the unexplainable. I needed to know if the truth was as simple as a misdirected workout routine, or if it was a window into a hidden life that would forever alter our future together. In that vulnerable state, with the dawn breaking and the world beginning to stir, I realized that this was not just about a fitness tracker or a misplaced workout. It was about trust, the delicate, intricate trust that had been the cornerstone of our love. And now, that trust was in tatters, the shards of our shared past glinting in the early morning light, reflecting a reality I was not sure I could accept. With a heavy heart and a mind full of questions, I resolved to wait for her return, knowing that the confrontation ahead would determine the course of our future. Whether it would lead us to a painful separation or the difficult path of rebuilding trust, I knew one thing for certain. I could no longer ignore the truth that was laid bare by the silent testimony of her fitness tracker. And so, as the day unfolded and the quiet anticipation turned to dread, I braced myself for the inevitable conversation that would change everything. The evening settled over the city like a heavy curtain, the air thick with the weight of unsaid words. I sat at the kitchen table, the faint hum of the refrigerator the only sound in our apartment. My mind raced, each moment feeling like an eternity as I waited for her to come home. I had already replayed the scene in my mind 1,000 times, imagining every possible reaction she might have when confronted with the evidence of her late-night workouts. Would she lie? Would she deny it? Or would she break down and confess? The door finally clicked open, and my heart skipped. She stepped inside, her face illuminated by the dim hallway light, looking as she always did, flustered, tired, but with a smile that I had once found comforting. But tonight, her smile didn't reach her eyes. Something had shifted between us, and I could feel it in the way she hesitated in the doorway, sensing the tension in the room before I said a word. "Hey," she greeted me softly, her voice slightly higher than usual, as if she were trying to mask the underlying unease. "How was your day?" I forced a smile, trying to sound casual, though every word felt like a lie. "It was fine. Just wanted to talk to you about something." My voice cracked, betraying the calm I was desperately trying to maintain. She walked into the kitchen, her eyes instinctively darting to the coffee table, where her phone lay, as if sensing that something had changed. I knew she saw the way I was looking at her, the way my fingers lingered on the edge of the table where her fitness tracker data had once been a harmless statistic. I couldn't keep it in anymore. "Sit down," I said, my voice low and firm, as I gestured to the chair opposite me. "We need to talk." She froze, her eyes widening ever so slightly. Her smile faltered. "What's going on, Mark?" There was a catch in her throat now, and I could tell she was trying to read my face, but my eyes betrayed nothing. I picked up her phone, the same phone that had been the gateway to this moment, and placed it gently in front of her. The silence stretched, suffocating in its heaviness. I could feel the tension between us, a crackling energy that hung in the air. I wasn't sure how to begin, how to explain how I had uncovered the truth. "Look," I began, taking a deep breath, "I've been seeing something on your tracker, something I can't ignore. You've been working out at a place I didn't know about. Every night, for over a week. I need to know what's going on. What's happening at that apartment?" Her face went pale, the color draining from her cheeks as she slowly sat down. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she just looked at me, as though trying to find the right words or some way to escape the truth that had already been laid bare. Her hands trembled, and for the first time, I saw the cracks in her composure. Mark, I didn't, she began, her voice quivering. I didn't want you to find out like this. I was going to tell you, I swear. I just didn't know how to explain it. I didn't want you to think, her words faltered, and she clasped her hands tightly in her lap, her eyes darting to the side as if avoiding my gaze. Think what, Sarah? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. What is it that you didn't want me to think? Because right now, I'm just trying to understand why I'm finding this out in such a way. Why weren't you honest with me? She inhaled sharply, gathering herself. She wiped away the tears that had begun to form, her eyes meeting mine now, raw and open. Mark, it's not what you think. It's not about someone else. I needed something for myself. Something outside of all of this. I leaned forward, my heart heavy with the unknown. Something for yourself. I repeated, feeling the words sting. You've been lying to me, hiding where you've been going every night. If it wasn't about someone else, then what was it about? She shifted in her seat, the weight of her next words pressing down on her chest like a heavy stone. I've been feeling overwhelmed. I've been feeling like I'm losing myself in this life. You know, with work, with the pressure to be perfect all the time. And everything's just been so much, Mark. I needed something to take me away, something that felt like mine. And that apartment, it's a space where I can just breathe. Just for a little while, without the expectations of being who I'm supposed to be. I sat back, trying to process what she was saying, but the words she spoke didn't fit into the reality I had come to know. So, what, you've been going there every night to, meditate? Just to unwind? I didn't know whether to feel anger, pity, or confusion. Nothing made sense anymore. She nodded, her eyes filled with emotion. Yes. I swear, that's all it was. There's no one else, no secret romance, no affair. I just needed a place to get away from everything. I didn't want you to think I was unhappy with you or our life. I've just been drowning in everything, and that apartment was my escape. My time to breathe. But I should have told you. I should have trusted you enough to share it. I stared at her, processing what she was saying. I wanted to believe her, to take comfort in the fact that there was no third party involved, that my fears of her being involved with someone else were misplaced. But even as she spoke, something in me recoiled. It wasn't just the secrecy, it was the realization that she had been so lost, so disconnected from the life we had built together, that she'd felt the need to hide away in someone else's apartment. It was a breach of trust, even if it wasn't physical. It was an emotional wall that had been built between us, one that I couldn't ignore. I ran a hand through my hair, the weight of it all crashing over me. But Sarah, why couldn't you just tell me? Why keep this hidden? She shifted in her seat, looking away, as if she couldn't bear the weight of my gaze any longer. I was scared, Mark. Scared that you'd think I wasn't happy with you, that I was ungrateful for everything we've built. I didn't want you to think you weren't enough. But the truth is, I wasn't happy with me. I lost sight of who I was, and I was too afraid to face that. Her voice cracked, and the tears she had been holding back finally began to fall freely. I was trying to hold it together, but I felt like I was breaking apart. And I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't want to admit that I felt so lost. I felt the sting of her words, a sharp reminder that we had both been drifting, she, lost in a sea of unspoken fears, and me, too consumed by my own routine to notice the signs. It wasn't just her late-night getaways that had fractured our trust, it was the absence of real communication, the walls we had both built around ourselves, never truly looking beyond the surface. I took a deep breath, trying to find the words to bridge the chasm between us. I wish you'd come to me, Sarah. I wish you'd trusted me enough to tell me you were struggling. Because I want to help you. I want to be the person you turn to when everything feels too much. I don't want you to feel alone in this. But now, I don't know where to go from here. She reached out, her hands shaking as she placed them gently on mine. Mark, I am so sorry. I know I messed up. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I know I've hurt you, and I'm ashamed of the way I handled this. But I need you to know, there was no one else. It was just me, trying to cope in the only way I knew how. Please, don't give up on me. I looked down at our hands, feeling the weight of her touch, the gravity of the moment pressing down on me. I didn't know if I could forgive her right away. I didn't know if I could forget the secret she had kept from me. But in that moment, I realized that the road to healing would not be straightforward. It would take time, patience, and a willingness to face the truth, no matter how painful. I don't know yet, Sarah, I said quietly. I don't know if I can just forget this. But I'll try. I'll try to understand why you did what you did. I just need time. She nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and sorrow. I'll give you all the time you need. I'll do whatever it takes to show you that I want to be the person you deserve. I sat there in the silence that followed, feeling a sense of both relief and uncertainty. The path ahead was unclear, but one thing was certain. The truth had been laid bare, and now it was up to us to decide how to rebuild, piece by fragile piece, the trust that had been broken. I wasn't sure where that journey would take us, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were finally being honest with each other. And maybe, just maybe, that was a step in the right direction. The weeks that followed that fateful conversation were a blur of emotions, moments of clarity, bursts of hope, and deep, lingering doubts. I found myself questioning everything, our relationship, our history, and whether the love we shared could survive the cracks that had begun to form. But as the days stretched into weeks, I slowly started to see things more clearly. I couldn't erase the hurt, but I could choose how to move forward. It was not an easy decision, and it was a decision I wasn't sure I was ready to make. Each morning, I woke up with a lingering ache in my chest, as though my heart was trying to adjust to a new rhythm, one that no longer included the blind trust one had once given her. I still loved her, there was no denying that. But the betrayal she had inflicted, even if it wasn't physical, had shaken me in ways I couldn't yet articulate. I wasn't sure if we could find a way back to what we once had, but I wasn't ready to give up completely. Not yet. One evening, a few weeks after our confrontation, Sarah and I sat across from each other in the same spot where we'd had that painful conversation. This time, however, the air between us wasn't filled with tension, but a quiet, tentative understanding. I had agreed to see a therapist, and Sarah had followed suit, both of us knowing that rebuilding trust would require more than just apologies, it would require real work, a willingness to uncover the deeper issues that had caused the rift between us in the first place. I know I'm not the same person I was when we first met, she said softly, looking down at her hands in her lap. I've spent so much time trying to be everything for everyone else that I lost sight of who I really was. I kept running from the parts of me that I didn't want to face, and I thought if I just kept myself busy, if I kept my life full, I wouldn't have to confront those parts of myself. I could see the vulnerability in her eyes, the way her voice shook as she spoke, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. It wasn't the same as before, but it was something. She was being honest, and that honesty was the first step toward healing. You know, I replied, my voice steady, I never realized how much I took for granted. I thought I was the one who was always transparent, the one who laid it all out on the table. But I see now that I wasn't. I should have been more present. I should have listened to you more, seen the signs that you were slipping away from me. She reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine, and for a moment, I allowed myself to lean into her touch. It was tentative, fragile, like a flower blooming after a harsh winter. I'm so sorry for shutting you out, Mark. I never meant to hurt you. I thought I could handle it on my own, but I was wrong. I needed to talk to you, to tell you everything, but I was too afraid. I closed my eyes for a moment, allowing the weight of her words to sink in. It was painful, but it was also a relief. This raw honesty, this willingness to face what had been hidden, was the first step in reclaiming something between us. I wasn't sure if it could ever be the same again, but I knew that with this kind of honesty, we could rebuild. It would take time, so much time, but it was possible. I don't know if we'll ever go back to how things were, Sarah, I said quietly, but I'm willing to try. I'm willing to do the work, to learn how to trust again. And if you're willing to face your past, to show me who you are now, then maybe we can find a new way forward. She nodded, her eyes filling with tears as she squeezed my hand. I want that, too. I don't know how to fix everything, but I'm here. I'm here with you, for you, and I'll be honest with you from now on. And for the first time in a long time, I believed her. The road ahead wasn't easy. There were nights when I woke up in a cold sweat, the memory of her secret workouts and the dark apartment flashing through my mind. I would lie there, heart pounding, and wonder if I was being naive, if I was just setting myself up for another betrayal. But then I would remember the conversations we'd had, the therapy sessions, and the tiny, but meaningful steps she was taking toward being more open. And I would remind myself that healing wasn't linear, it wasn't about fixing everything overnight. It was about making the choice every day to try, to do better, and to trust again. As the weeks turned into months, I saw the changes in Sarah. She became more open, more communicative, and, most importantly, more honest with herself and with me. There were still moments of doubt, moments when old fears crept into my mind, but we worked through them together, piece by fragile piece. We took small steps, rebuilding our connection, watching movies together, talking for hours over dinner, and rediscovering the joy in the little things that had once brought us closer. One evening, Sarah suggested we go for a walk, something simple, just the two of us, in the park where we had spent so many afternoons early in our relationship. It was a warm spring night, the kind where the air is crisp and the stars seem to shine brighter than usual. As we walked, I felt a strange peace settle over me. We were talking, really talking, without the weight of secrecy or doubt between us. There was something comforting in knowing that we were building a new version of our relationship, one rooted in honesty and understanding. "Mark," she said softly, her voice almost shy, "I know we have a long way to go, but I'm glad we're still here. I'm glad you're still with me." I stopped walking and turned to face her, taking her hands in mine. The soft light from the street lamps illuminated her face, and for the first time in months, I saw her as I had before, the woman I fell in love with, vulnerable but willing to fight for us. "I'm glad, too," I said quietly. "And I'll keep fighting for us. For you. For me. For the love we still have, even if it's different than before." We stood there in the cool night, the world around us still, as if holding its breath, and for a brief moment, I allowed myself to believe that we could rebuild. It wouldn't be easy, and there would be days when we stumbled, but I knew now that we had the strength to face whatever came next, together. The fitness tracker had revealed something I could never have anticipated, and it had broken the trust we once had, but in the aftermath, it had also forced us to confront the parts of ourselves that we had neglected, both individually and as a couple. We had found a new kind of honesty, one that might not erase the scars but could eventually heal the wounds. And in that healing, there was a hope, a fragile hope, that maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild something stronger, something truer, than what we had before. As we continued our walk, hand in hand, I realized that life, like love, wasn't perfect. It was messy, complicated, and sometimes painful, but it was also beautiful, and worth fighting for. And in that moment, I believed we were worth fighting for, too.